Look at where you are right now. Be honest. This wasn't how it was supposed to go, was it? You had plans. You had momentum. You had people around you who swore they were solid. And then everything collapsed. Not slowly. Not gently. All at once. One hit after another. Loss stacked on top of loss. Silence where support should have been. Smiles turning into distance. Loyalty turning into memory. And the worst part? You didn't fall in private. They saw it. They saw you lose. They saw you struggle. They saw you break down when you thought nobody was looking. And some of them enjoyed it. Yeah. Don't flinch. You know it's true. They pretended to care. They shook their heads and said, "That's sad." But inside, they felt relief, satisfaction, even joy. Because your fall made them feel safer. You were a threat once. Your confidence, your drive, your potential. It reminded them of everything they weren't willing to become. So when you stumbled, they thought that was it. They thought the story was over. They thought God finally took his hand off you. But here's what they don't understand. God doesn't prepare comebacks on a stage. He prepares them in isolation. Right now, you're not being forgotten. You're being hidden. And there's a difference. See, if God elevated you immediately, the lesson wouldn't stick. If he restored everything too fast, you'd still be vulnerable to the same attacks. So instead, he pulled you back, out of the spotlight, out of the noise, out of reach. And while it feels like delay, it's actually strategy. Because a comeback that's rushed can be reversed. But a comeback that's prepared, that one changes history. They think you're finished because they can't see progress. But preparation doesn't make noise. It's quiet. Painfully quiet. It happens late at night when nobody's checking on you. It happens when you're forced to confront your own weaknesses. It happens when pride is stripped away and only truth remains. That's where God works best. You weren't pulled back to be humiliated. You were pulled back to be rebuilt correctly. Because the next version of you can't be handled the same way the old one was. They hurt you once because you trusted too easily. They betrayed you once because you gave access without discernment. They underestimated you once because you didn't yet know your value. That won't happen again. And that's why this preparation hurts. You're learning how to stand alone, how to move without applause, how to trust God instead of people. And that kind of strength, that scares enemies more than talent ever could. Right now, they think they won. They think silence means surrender. They think your absence means defeat. Let them think that. Because arrogance blinds people, and blind enemies don't see the comeback coming. God is working behind the scenes, aligning things you can't yet see, removing people who would have sabotaged your future, closing doors that looked like opportunities but were actually traps. You thought you lost everything. What you really lost were liabilities. And yes, it hurt. Because loss always hurts, even when it's necessary. But every setback you survived, is proof that you're being conditioned for something bigger. You didn't lose because you were weak. You lost because you outgrew the environment you were in, and environments fight back when you try to leave them. That's what this season is. Resistance. And not punishment, not failure. Resistance. Because you don't resist things that are insignificant. They tried to stop you because they sensed where you were going. They mocked you when you fell, questioned your faith, doubted your ability to recover. But while they were laughing, God was rearranging. While they were talking, God was refining. While they were celebrating too early, God was setting the stage. And the stage matters. Because God doesn't do quiet comebacks. He does undeniable ones. When He brings you back, it won't be subtle. It won't be something they can explain away. It won't be luck. It'll be the kind of comeback that forces silence. The kind that makes people uncomfortable. That's the kind that answers questions nobody dares to ask out loud. They're going to remember who you were when you fell. They're going to remember the version of you they dismissed. And when you return, disciplined, focused, unshakable, it's going to mess with them. Because comebacks don't just restore position, they expose character. Your comeback will remind them who doubted you, who left you, who counted you out, and you won't need to say a word. Your presence will be enough. Right now, God is teaching you patience because impatience would ruin what's coming. He's teaching you humility because pride would collapse your future. He's teaching you discipline because talent alone won't sustain what He's about to give you. You're being trained, not delayed. That's why it feels repetitive. Why the days blur together.
Why progress feels slow.
Training is boring, but battle rewards it. And make no mistake, your comeback is a battle outcome. You're not returning as the same person who fell. That person couldn't survive the next level. You're returning with boundaries, with awareness, with a backbone. The version of you that's coming back won't beg, won't chase, won't tolerate disrespect, disguised as familiarity. That's why some people from your past won't have access anymore. Not because you're bitter, but because you're wiser. Enemies hate wisdom more than strength. Because wisdom sees traps before they close. And soon they're going to hear about you again. Not rumors, not gossip. Results. They'll hear your name spoken differently. With confusion. With disbelief. With envy. They try to hide. They'll wonder how you recovered from what should have destroyed you. How you rebuilt after losing everything. How you came back stronger instead of resentful. And the truth? You didn't come back alone. God carried you through a season they could never survive. That's why they can't relate to your growth. That's why they can't understand your calm. That's why they feel uneasy around you now. Because you're no longer operating from fear. Fear made you predictable. Faith makes you dangerous. This comeback isn't about revenge. It's about revelation. God is showing you who you are when everything is stripped away. And He's showing them what happens when they misjudge someone. He's protecting. Your enemies are about to witness something they can't interfere with. They won't be able to sabotage it. They won't be able to stop it. They won't be able to replicate it. Because what God prepares personally can't be taken publicly. When the comeback happens, it'll be too solid to shake, too grounded to attack, too real to deny. They'll try to reconnect, to rewrite history, to claim they believed in you all along. But you'll remember who was there in the preparation season, and that's all that matters. You won't gloat. You won't gloat, then people. You won't brag. You won't explain. You'll just move differently. Because the strongest people don't announce their return. They let impact do the talking. God is preparing your comeback right now. In silence. In pressure. In isolation. And when he releases you back into the world, your enemies won't be watching a survivor. They'll be watching a force they helped create by trying to destroy you. And that's the part they'll have to live with. And here's the part nobody prepares you for. The waiting. Not the loud waiting. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet waiting where nothing seems to change on. This is where most people lose their faith. Because it feels like God went silent. Right after it feels, but silence doesn't mean absence. It means focus. When God is quiet, it's because he's working too precisely to be interrupted. Right now, your life is being repositioned. Your mindset is being recalibrated. Your weaknesses are being exposed. Not to shame you, but to remove them. Because the comeback he's preparing cannot afford cracks in the armor. You don't see it yet, but you're being trained to carry weight. Influence has weight. Influence has weight. Punning weight. Stability has weight. Authority has weight. And if you carried what's coming with the old version of you, it would crush you. So God slowed you down. He forced you to sit with your thoughts, to confront your patterns, to face the parts of you that used to hide behind distractions. That's why this season feels uncomfortable. You can't escape yourself anymore. And that's intentional. Your enemies thought isolation would weaken you. They thought being alone would make you fold. They thought the distance would erase you. But isolation didn't shrink you. It clarified you. You're seeing people clearly now. Not how you hoped they were. Not how they pretended to be. But how they actually are. And that clarity is painful, but it's priceless. Because now, nobody can get close enough to destroy you the same way again. God is teaching you discernment before he gives you visibility. Because visibility without discernment is a trap. Think about it. Think about it. The people who hurt you before only had power because you let them close. That access is gone now. And they feel it. They don't know why you don't respond the same. Why you're no longer emotionally available to their games. Why their words don't land like they used to. They sense something has changed. And that unsettles them. Because when someone changes in silence, it usually means God is involved. You're not arguing anymore. You're not defending yourself anymore. You're not trying to convince anyone of your worth anymore. You're letting time reveal truth. And time is undefeated. Sooner or later, your consistency is going to expose their lies. Your peace is going to expose their chaos. Your discipline is going to expose their laziness. and you won't have to do a thing. This is the dangerous part of preparation. You're becoming comfortable without recognition. And when someone no longer needs applause, they become unstoppable. God is removing your dependency on external validation because the next season requires internal authority. You won't be able to doubt yourself where you're going. You won't have time to second guess. You won't have room for insecurity. So he's killing it now. And yes, it hurts. It hurts to outgrow people you once loved. It hurts to realize some people only liked you when you were convenient. It hurts to accept that some relationships were assignments, not lifetimes. Not lifetimes, but delayed pain is multiplied pain. God is cutting now so you don't bleed later. And while you're doing this internal work, your enemies are still stuck on the old version of you. That's their mistake. They're preparing for a fight that no longer exists. They're holding grudges against someone who doesn't live there anymore. They think they know you. They don't. They don't. The you they remember was still learning, still open, still unguarded. The you that's coming back, that version has vision. And vision makes people dangerous. Because when someone sees clearly, manipulation fails. Control fails. Fear fails. You're no longer reacting emotionally. You're moving intentionally. And intentional movement is hard to stop. God is aligning your comeback with timing, not emotion. Because emotional comebacks burn fast and fade quicker. But strategic comebacks last. That's why you've been forced to wait longer than you wanted. That's why opportunities didn't open when you thought they would. That's why doors closed that seemed perfect. God wasn't denying you. He was protecting the comeback. Some doors open too early and expose you too soon. Some platforms reveal you before you're armored. God refused to let that happen to you. And one day, maybe sooner than you think, things are going to shift quickly. So quickly, it'll feel unreal. That's how preparation works. I'll wait long seasons of nothing, followed by sudden acceleration. And the people watching from the sidelines won't understand how it happened so fast. They won't see the nights you spent rebuilding your mind. They won't see the habits you broke. They won't see the discipline you developed when nobody cared. They'll only see the result. And results make people uncomfortable. Especially enemies. Because your comeback won't just elevate you. It will expose them. Expose who doubted you. Expose who celebrated your fall. Expose who tried to take credit when things go right, but vanished when things went wrong. And that exposure won't come from your words. It'll come from contrast. The difference between who you are now and who they stayed. That's why God prepares comebacks publicly, but builds them privately. Right now, He's strengthening your spine, teaching you how to say no without guilt, how to walk away without explaining, how to keep your heart open without being foolish. That balance, that's power. You're not closed off, you're controlled. And controlled people don't self-destruct when tested. Where your enemies expected bitterness. They expected rage. They expected you to crash out. But instead, you chose growth. And growth confuses people who thrive on chaos. They don't know how to deal with someone who doesn't need revenge. Because revenge keeps you connected to them. Elevation disconnects you completely. And soon, that elevation will be visible. You'll walk into rooms you were once locked out of. You'll be heard by people who once ignored you. You'll stand confident in spaces where you once felt small. And the people who thought you were done, they'll be watching quietly, wondering how you came back like this, wondering how they misjudged you so badly, wondering how someone they tried to destroy became untouchable. But here's the final truth you need to understand. Your comeback isn't about humiliating your enemies. It's about humbling you in the best way. Because once you've been broken and rebuilt by God, you don't move with arrogance. You move with authority. You don't seek validation. You walk in purpose. And purpose is intimidating to people who live without it. God is preparing your comeback in front of your enemies. Not so you can look down on them, but so you never look down on yourself again. Because once you survive this season, once you see what God carried you through, once you realize how much stronger you are than you ever imagined, you'll never doubt His hand on your life again. They'll see the comeback, but only you will understand the cost, and that's why it will last.